simultaneous translation into Albanian? Maybe I should say that some night on camera, and maybe somebody watching this will go, aha, that explains it. That's why I don't understand it. We're still talking about speech as the fourth new S. We were still talking about speech as the basis of man's secondary world, and we were still talking about speech's own little motor, that is, human thought, and how it operates normally at what is evidential, rarely provable, at less than a maximal potential. And we were talking about how ordinary thought must always begin and then operate from some point of view, and yet how this is an instant limitation. And I believe, lastly, last time that we were arrested together, that last time that we were here together, we were also talking right then about how that the thinking of the collective, that is, of just ordinary, what we're oftentimes given to calling city thinking, just the ordinary middle of the bell curve, consensual thinking, wisdom, insight, the collective thought, that how collective thinking is indispensable and is yet insufficient. Is that not where we left off? Thank you. One of the Kyroots tonight pointed out that part of being ordinary, if anyone needs any sort of pocket gauge to go along with it, in case you need to be checking yourself, part of being ordinary is to take the indispensable as being sufficient. And what this has to do with is every Adam and Eve must think Adam-like and Eve-like thoughts. You simply have no initial choice. If you had a choice and you tried to take it, it would be self-destructive. You simply have no choice if you again try and take the kind of descriptions we've been using of man's primary world of being just a silent, absolutely basic, non-singular world, that which we could, for the sake of discussion, say that you have in common with your friends, the beavers and squirrels. That from that grows in a seamless spectrum into what we have been calling the secondary world. And you do understand when I say Adam and Eve like, I am making no particular reference to the grand old tradition of the Republican Party. Is that it? No, Christianity. I always confuse them. If we said Bob-like thoughts, Bob must think Bob-like. Now, if there is, and whatever Bob-like is, we are referring now back to the primary level. We're referring to the absolute DNA with no kind of would-be hocus pocus or mysticism. It is simply, regardless of what you may have studied in Psychology 101, and if you went that far, I don't know what anybody with your education is doing watching this kind of foolishness anyway. But at any rate, regardless of anything you may have heard, all Bobs, all sane Bobs, Bills, Janes, Lily Pearls, everyone thinks Bob-like thoughts. If you do not, and you're living in the midst of the collective, it will be not very long until someone will identify you, and they will, at no expense to you, put you somewhere where you can eat for free and you do not have to lace up your shoes in as much as your laces are gone. You are, all in all, you are simply, from the ordinary view, you are intellectually dysfunctional, I believe is what they call it. That sounds right. So all Bobs think Bob-like. It's not right or wrong. There is no sort of extraordinary view to say that that's incorrect. If you are DNA'd to be Fred or Ethel, then you are going to be properly sane to think only Fred and Ethel thoughts. That's the beginning. That's long before any of this kind of nonsense. But that being the fact, that is your native way of thinking, there is no possible doubt for you to debate whether it's indispensable. It would be, that's just foolishness. That would be the same as saying, sir, could you not be, now that I'm talking to you, and if it's Bob or Adam, he says yes, would you, just for the sake of experimentation or just to humor me, would you suddenly be Alfonso? You understand what I'm saying? Would you suddenly be that which you are not right now, just on the spot? It is absolute foolishness. Would you suddenly lose 40 pounds? Could you suddenly, temporarily for a moment, could you straighten out your nose? I find it annoying to try and talk to you, or make your ears lay back. It's silly, right? No one discusses this. It is not open to any sort of self-debate. A sane person, again, we're not talking about the anomalies and the blisters. Well, we're not talking about the aberrations of city life. Ordinary people in no way could discuss, they could not even entertain the possibility that on the spot that they could be other than what they are. Now, of course, this has nothing to do with the fact that all sane people have the unsurprising awareness that they are an unfinished product, that they're open-ended, and they should be doing better. Everyone knows that. But insofar as taking a sane person and saying, sir, you're extremely ugly and obnoxious and overweight or underweight, and you go, well, would you please stop it at least while we're talking? Right. So you understand the folly of all that. So there is absolutely, it is a tacit collective agreement that what you are, what you think, not just the way you look, but what you think, which is what makes Adam Adam or Fred Fred or Ethel Ethel. It's not just your looks, because you can be confused by looks. You can see somebody, even being in such a strange place as, Charleston. And you can see somebody going around a corner and think, damn, there's Ethel. What the hell is she doing here? And, of course, you get a good look, and it's not. And it's not just a better look, but you can look in her face or look in her eyes. You want to look around. And anyway, what makes Ann Ethel, whoever we're talking about, or a Bob, is this. So, without any discussion, without any ambivalence on their part, they don't have to belong to the society. And don't any English scholars write me about the misuse, if any use at all, of the word ambivalent. Kyroots just reports it. There is no question in the person's mind that what they're thinking is indispensable to them. They would not necessarily refer to it as thought. They think about it as their own personality. They think about it as a full cornucopia of feelings, sensations, opinions, beliefs. That which makes me, if I'm Bob, Bob. They understand that's indispensable. That's the basis of you laughing when I say you could not turn to a person and say, just for a moment, while you're trying to sell me on this product, I might buy it. But can you please be 50 pounds lighter and get those ears laid back so that you don't annoy me? Everyone understands that's ridiculous, physically. It is even more so ridiculous, although it would not even be worthy of discussion, to consider it in a non-somatic way, in an intellectual manner. Thus, everyone knows without any discussion that what they think, their sensation of what they are, is indispensable. From there, it is an extremely short step, so short that I will not waste our time with the dramatic attempt to even make such a teeny-weeny step. It's just sort of like, that is, going from what I think is indispensable to what I think is sufficient. Well, all right, back to if you asked Bob or Adam or Ethel, you said, could you, just for a second, just for a few minutes here, and you can go back doing whatever you want to, but just while we're talking, could you please not be what you are? Not only is that ridiculous, if you said, well, don't you find it annoying to be what you are? Now, I'm not going to drag it, as you should know, it's going to be a waste of time to drag it into the idea of trying to grab this person as they could be, what do you guys call it in the city? Truthful. If they were being truthful, and if you said, well, now, I find you somewhat annoying, are you absolutely, perfectly, completely pleased with yourself? Any sane person will say no. That's part of being sane, is to know that you are an unfinished service. Oh, I'm sorry, unfinished goods. That's right. Most of you keep thinking in the sense of, yes, I'm a noun. Some of you, that's open to some, well. Do you know how to diagram your own sentences? You know where you fall. At any rate, people know they should change and that they can change, and I should quit drinking, or I should quit eating so much sugar, or whatever they think. And yet on the basis of, we're not just talking about should you change in the future. Should you be working to improve yourself? Well, certainly. But if you said right now, that kind of foolishness of would you please change right now, they know that what I am right this second is indispensable. I can't be other than this. And so if you could hold their attention right there to that irrelevant moment to most people, that is right now. And so right now, is that sufficient? Not that you are that you're on a diet now, that you've been taking up jogging, or you're going to school at night. Not that you're not trying to improve yourself over some wide range, that is your life, but right now, I know you don't believe you're perfect because you're a sane person, but is what you are right this second sufficient? Now, nobody talks like this, but do you follow? They could, and we're not talking psychological. We're talking the laws of physics, the laws of hormones and blood and breath. Their answer is a silent, are you nuts? On this basis, operationally, if you said, and if you're trying to get still wander off the track that everyone knows that they're not perfect, well, that's what they say. They still operationally find themselves at any given moment to be sufficient. Now, if that sounds contradictory, ask yourself this. If they do not find themselves to be sufficient, why at that moment are they not engaged in some change? Or why are they not engaged, if they're sane, engaged in some self-directed rage? That they're beating the crap out of themselves. They're slapping themselves around. Why are they not in the midst of some contemporaneous fit, either in a positive or negative sense? You're left at this. If you're left at anything, is that at the ordinary level, everyone, it is a natural phenomenon. It happens just like this. It is the movement of energy that an ordinary person, that is everybody up to the limit that their nervous system is normally produced, up at that level, be you Adam, Ricky, Lucille, Ethel, anybody else, you must, if you're Bob, your thoughts must be Bob-like for you to be in the sane part of life, to be part of the healthy, survivable collective to start with. And to do that, there is a natural progression. As I said, it's instantaneous. It is not really sequential, but since we're talking, and all sentences must be diagrammed sequentially. The feeling is what I am doing is indispensable. On the operational basis, not a verbal basis, not a theoretical basis, what I'm thinking, my Bob-like thoughts, me being Bob, my Bob-like thoughts are indispensable. Because if you took away my Bob-like thoughts, what have I got? Nothing. Not right then. So they're indispensable. In other words, I can only be me. Truly, contemporaneously, as much as it belies a secondary sense of reason or a sequential sense of reason, it is also instantaneous that feeling of indispensability for me thinking Bob-like thoughts is also, well, it's sufficient. I repeat one more time, if you grab this sane Bob or Adam or Eve and you say, well, now, wait a minute. You're saying it's sufficient. You mean you don't want to improve yourself? You're never going to learn anything else? Then Adam would say, well, certainly not. But you ask me right now, is me being me, we've already established it's indispensable. I cannot be other than what I am right this second. I'm working on it. Okay. But not only is it indispensable, it's also, give me a break. It's sufficient, at least for right now. Hell, I'm still alive. I'm making sense to you. You say you don't like the way I look or the way I'm talking, but at least it's sufficient. I'm sane. They're not arresting me. They're not trying to take me away in a little white coat. So it is always left in the nervous system, that sense that belies a polarized energy base of an intellectual conception of a 3D world. It belies a sequential order because it operates in a coeval existence up the nervous system. That is, it's all going on at one time, feeling as though what you think is indispensable, and then that moves into it being sufficient. It's coeval. It's just like the different time zones we're talking about Eastern time and Pacific time. It's not that one follows the other, although I know in a temporal sense that you think it does, but they're operating simultaneously. It's the same thing in the nervous system. From a quite, to expand it into what also we're talking about, from a quite predictable, understandable basis, this old ordinary mind of man, as you guys had already convinced me, you showed me the truth of it, it must begin and then it must continue to function on the basis of what we're calling a point of view. A point of view, then, is thusly indispensable. And even more thusly, the point of view feels, the nervous system feels it to be sufficient. If it's never questioned, whatever one's point of view at that particular moment is, at that kind of right now, in which ordinary attention has no particular vested interest, as proven by its own functions, by its own ability to go, wait a minute, I'm not as alert as I can be. Oh, now I am. Okay, what were you saying? By its own admission, the point of view, and it has nothing whatsoever to do with the point of view is about economics, religion, psychology, or whether a man can, in today's modern world, wear brown shoes. It has the point of view, it doesn't matter what it is, and it does not matter whether the point of view is pro-fundamentalist Islam or anti-brown shoes. I mean, you can take these kind of diversely extreme positions, the kinds of things tearing apart Lebanon now. Well, even worse, Yugoslavia, where brown shoes are much more common. The point of view has nothing to do, all right, I'll just say it, with anything. Except with ordinary people. And the point of view is everything. And one more time, regardless of some ordinary mind that could hear this and go, well, you're talking about, here they go, watch them. Or you're talking about undue prejudice. You're talking about unseemly biasness. What is an overcooked oxymoron? Or what is an Edsel turned inside out? I don't know. It's not undue prejudice. It is not unseemly biasness. I'm not even going to stop and kick those tires, you know. It is not a judgment on point of view. Me continuing to say point of view and continue to use those very helpful hand gestures with point of view. Not to infer that a point of view is necessarily erotically based, but I'll leave it to your own imagination. The point of view is the very thing, it's like having a second word. If you want to go back sometime in the past that we talked about, the human intellect, which is the only thing that makes you singular. All of you know that by now, except for any squirrels or beavers watching this, and you have to translate it for yourself. But no one's mind, no human nervous system will ever have one thought until what? All right, you tell us. You heard it there. Until he has a second thought, which I've inferred to you is the hidden kind of little joke, although they didn't mean it, of all the world's religions, all the myths everywhere, that somewhere the gods, when they really want to get things going, which means they got man's nervous system thinking and talking so it could write about the gods and the myths. I mean, if you want to talk about vested interest, but at any rate, and all of the myths, all the religions everywhere have got a story about, they'll do some kind of mumble and get it going in a little preface, let the pit band play a little intro until everybody's seated. And then the stories about the gods, the great forces, give the word. Most of the religions got real fancy about it after a few thousand years before the Greeks began to take serious notes. That was harder to pull the wool over people's eyes. The golden fleece notwithstanding. But it was always, they got into the word was never given. It was just a report that the gods looked down and saw everything went well, and they gave the word, which is a very interesting reflection if you now see it as no great stumbling block, or it shouldn't keep you there drooling over it forever, but it is saying that the human intellect is what got this world going. That is. And so it is only natural, or a cruder sensation of it, is to attribute it to great external forces, that the Word got it going. Or in the Judaic Christian tradition, God said whatever, boom, wow, or zoom, zot, and it took off. It's real close, just close enough to give civilians thousands of years worth of thrills and the willies. Because what it doesn't say is the first word wouldn't do anything. I mean, the first word might have made, if we're going to talk metaphorically, the God's happy, or whoever was able outside of a system to say the first word, but the first word wouldn't do it. Because if you knew one word, you might as well know nothing. You got to know two words for the first word to make any sense. You got to know two words that you can be able to say the first word. You all know that. From that is the basis of me saying that the human intellect cannot begin to operate. You cannot crank it up until you have a point of view, until you've got a second word. And if you've got a second word, it is comparable to the first word. It has to be. Now, we could be silly for a second. For a second? I resent that. Oh. I guess I could try and be silly to ordinary people. If somebody said, well, wait a minute, just because you had two words, they don't have to be comparable. You could have the two words. For those of you who remember, there's a Kyroot told about some man, just to prove the fact that he did have an unconscious, used to willfully confuse the words sacred and nipple. Wasn't that it? That Kyroot's are right. We could take two words that would seem to be absolutely incongruous, and you could say, well, that they are not comparable if you only knew those two words. If the only two words you knew were freedom and cantaloupe. You can't do anything with it. Yes, you can. If nothing else, you could go, wait a minute, you can't do anything with it. They're incongruous. You thus, immediately, you've got no choice. If you know two words, that is, then your nervous system at this end can talk. It can think. And if you know two words, you've got a point of view. And it's got nothing to do with what ordinary people are inclined to refer to point of view with a certain pejorative, or it's very common for it to be a pejorative term, to say, well, that's your point of view, which you're saying. And that's a common currency in the city, is say, well, that's your point of view, and what you're saying is, well, that's your particular bias, or that's your personal sort of prejudice, that's your spin on it. That's your fix. That's your take on the matter. But, that's not necessarily a direct declamation of the truth. Yeah, come on. Lighten up. What I'm trying to get you to see in reference to a point of view is in no way a censure. It is in no way a judgment. Because even if you only knew two words of cantaloupe and freedom, and you said, well, those two words are so incongruous. Don't ask me how you can say all this if you only know those two words. I ain't got time to explain every damn thing. Well, that's not true. I mean, as far as I know, I do have time. But even though if you said, well, those two words are so unrelated that does not constitute a point of view. Now, a few of you kind of laughed few minutes ago, so I assume you see that even if you said, which would be a reasonable thing for a reasonable man to say, that, all right, if I only knew two words, and the two words were cantaloupe and freedom, they are so disjointed. The juxtaposition, any possible juxtaposition between the two is so remote that I cannot possibly have some, as you call it, point of view. What the hell they call that? See? So it has nothing to do with a judgment call. It has nothing to do with saying, well, a point of view is something less than some objective perception of reality. Because it's only people in the city that talk about as opposed to an objective perception of reality, in their dreams. The ordinary intellect has no such thing. It can talk about it, but remember, to find out reality, everything is used, including garbage and that which is denied existence. such as that. A point of view is the only way that the human intellect can move. And the point of view then is, in a sense, operationally synonymous with that which is indispensable, that which seems to be me, and that which is sufficient. Thus you have the basis also of all good struggles, all good apparent battles, wars between people. In a sense, for the sake of bookkeeping, scorekeeping, take your choice whether you're more sports-minded or mathematically minded, they take on the trappings of it being battles between Shiites and Sunnis and between Catholics and Protestants and between Armenians and Azerbaijans and between Fred and Mary. But the battle is between points of view. The battle is in the secondary system, assuming that you are civilized enough, which most of you are, that you are not back at the primary level out somewhere having to fight your fellow cave dweller over the berries you found this morning. The struggles are here. That is the friction helping to produce sustained growth. But there is one way to look at it, is a point of view. And I could even take that a little bit further if that was not far enough with ordinary intelligence, and they could say, well, you're right. Because the Protestants over here in Northern Ireland have a certain point of view, not just religiously, but insofar as how this way they talk, impacts upon their political standing. And it is a point of view that is in conflict with the Catholic point of view. But don't you see? Instead of saying a Protestant point of view and a Catholic point of view, put blank. Fill it in at your leisure. It is the point of view. It is the fact that a nervous system, that once it is in operation, it is by and large a representative creature of ordinary men's dreams, that I am almost a unique creature. No, I'll go for almost. Well, all right, you need another test? You got another pocket to put this in? All right. If you need a test that you're almost an individual person, let me ask you this. I hope none of you confuse this and think this is a stupid test again. Test, is it possible that you are almost a unique individual? Well, actually, I can do 2 or 3 questions that makes it sound better, because if you just give a person just one question, it tends to give people a certain amount of apprehension, like, like it's do or die. It's a win-lose situation. Whereas if you tell people there's going to be 5 questions, you figure, well, I can blow a couple of them. But we're running out of tape. The test about, is it possible, just ordinary level, you are, quote, almost a unique. Don't write me and tell me about the true definition of unique. That you're almost a unique individual. All right. Is there anybody in the world that seems to have less than a full-blown, passionate, positive attitude toward you? In other words, have you ever met anybody in your life that didn't seem to care for you and what you thought and the way you... Do I have to go into any more questions? If so, then you do qualify as almost a distinct individual person, because it means that your nervous system is alive and functioning. You have a point of view. Well, yes, my name's Fred, and I have the Fred point of view. And by and large, assuming this Fred does not have some sort of multidimensional twin that suddenly pops in here from the grave of some science fiction writer in your own dreams, then the world is going to be full of people who, for reasons that they have to dress up if they're questioning about it, by filling in the blanks, but their point of view is going to be that the Fred point of view could certainly be improved. which could be sort of a magnanimous retelling of their response, because it could be just, so that's the Fred point of view, is it? Well, may I say this to you, Fred? Somewhere in that full spectrum. But do note, since so many of you laughed and seemed to either, I guess it displays that you're either on drugs or that you found some validity in that. Do note that the very thing that is a living example of the fact that a person's nervous system is functional, is healthy, is also at the very basis that if you took those same ordinary sane people, just with a slight, just give them a chance to shift gears, and you said, what's probably the greatest problem facing our world? You know, other than the fact than pollution and that one shoe in the road. And any sane person would always say, they have always said, they continue to say, and nobody finds it interesting that they continue to say it, that the problem is, well, by God, we've got to learn to live together or we're all going to sink together. God, could I write that down? Talk about, and they wonder where the original thinkers are coming from. Let's see. You thought of that? Yes. Well, no offense, but it seemed like that just a while, it seemed like I almost heard that. When was it? 3500 BC? Well, I'm sorry. I'm sure you're telling me the truth. Listen, we have got to learn to live together. We have got to quit being involved in all these petty squabbles over patriotism, religion, or just different points of view. Notice. Or as Kyroots put it another way, if I may re-quote him, in the secondary world, that which does not poison nourishes, which Kyroots was left with a certain kind of sequential use of language again, because it is simultaneous. The very things that are nourishing from one view, from another view, are poison. We have got to stop being involved in these meaningless conflicts. One sane, decent person with another. When what they think they're saying, if that could be true, would be what? Well, how about Jonestown on a massive scale? Kool-Aid for everyone, please. Right before they announce, wait a minute, all conflicts are over. And just as the whole world began to cheer, they would all go, yeah. That's what it would amount to. It is not the point of view that is to blame. It is not the point of view that is some shortcoming. The point of view is the same thing as breath. The point of view is the same thing as being able to find the vital signs in an individual. But the thinking of the collective, which is a point of view, it seems to be in the individual. The thinking of the collective, of all the out there's, of all of what seems to be the not I's, the collective thinking, is always the basis of a point of view, but it is not sufficient. Would you repeat that? Not sufficient for some kind of weird individual here and there. I was going to say a revolutionist until that letter was read about the guy that accused Kyroots of making up the whole thing. That kind of puts a crimp in your... They asked me not to say that word anymore on tape. Puts a hole in your shoe. Puts a wrinkle in your tie. Well, I guess we're close enough to stop the tape rather than have to press on. I guess, well, I was fixing to go off onto even a greater hand gesture. But since the tape is running out, and for those of you that I do know, or I hear that there are some cosmologists who do watch this, and for the sake of symmetry, which I know is of great interest nowadays to some people. I would like to also go. And of course, on a more personal level, all I can do is give you my personal apologies that my ears are different sizes. Which, of course, reminds me of that great Buddhist prayer that some of you may know. There was a young lady from Sizes whose breasts were different sizes. Well,